everyone, it's Rax bringing you a guide for the pole barb for the metas to clear 150s in Season 18. Now, comparing this to the Barbarian build that we released a few days ago, the 22 pickup for rat runs, which I would consider the easiest build to play in the game, this is the exact opposite. I would say this is the very hardest. And what makes it difficult is you're on a constant timer. You have 32 seconds to move forward, pull everything, gather it, stomp it, pixel stack it, and keep everyone alive. And then when you get to the Guardian, you're going to need to help your RGK in any way that you can kill the boss, which is going to require a lot of knowledge of boss mechanics. So if you're really looking to challenge yourself in Diablo 3 and play one of the highest skill cap builds, this is the one for you. Okay, so let's look at the gear. We're going to wear Little Rogue and Slanderer. We're going to get increased attack speed, which is going to help us Furious Charge more and throw more spears, and it's going to increase our armor. We want attack speed and cooldown absolutely everywhere that we can get it, otherwise we're going to be taking survivability, which was why we have the life on hit gem in our weapon, and we're going to be augmenting everything with int for the all resist. And the offhand is going to be the Slanderer with the exact same stats. Okay. Illusory Boots is going to let us move freely among enemies, and we'd like int Vite all resistant armor if we can get it. Raycors, we're going to be taking the 4-piece here. If we hit one enemy, we're going to get a charge back. That way we can keep charging around the map, and we're going to get every single rune with the 4-piece. Int, Vite, and all resist is what we're hoping for, and we're going to sock it with all resist for survivability. Oculus Ring, even though the little pretty rings are going to be spawning everywhere, we still want to take Oculus Ring because our Oculus Ring can stack with the pink power ring or the other rings to give additional damage. Like always, we want attack speed and cooldown, and we take Efficacious Toxin here for the 10% damage. Zodiac, we're going to reduce the cooldown of our skills when we hit with a resource spending attack. It's going to bring all our cooldowns back up. We want attack speed, cooldown, and resource. We're going to roll the crit chance off for the socket, and we'll take Wreath of Lightning, not because it does any damage, but because it lets us move around better. Pride of Cassius, the belt, we want this because it's going to increase the duration of our Ignore Pain by 6 seconds. We need to keep Ignore Pain on ourselves and on our party at all times, so this is mandatory for the build. Invite, all resist, and percent life is what we're hoping for. Another piece of Raycors, like always, we want the attack speed and the cooldown. That's what we're really looking for. Can't get attack speed on the shoulders, so we'll just take the cooldown here. Otherwise, we'll take Fight, all resist, and life. Everything just to survive. The Orc's Crown is fantastic because it's going to double the effect of our gem. We'll put a diamond in there for 12.5% cooldown, which changes to 25. We'll take in all resist and life here. And Raycor's chest, just full survivability here, again with diamonds to survive with the all resist. This new Flavor of Time necklace is going to be absolutely insane because it's going to allow us to have a double duration on shield, channeling, and conduit. So conduit pylons in the meta runs are already so incredibly strong. The double duration is honestly going to change the way that it's played, and I think the times may be even lower this season than last season because of it. Because last season you had to take a conduit after clearing all the trash, and with 1 minute of it, you don't have to worry about that anymore. You can probably just YOLO it right away. Anyway, we want survivability stats and attack speed and cooldown. You might even be able to roll off that 12 movement speed. I'll have to look into that. I'm pretty sure you can. And we'll take the Gogok of Swiftness for the increased attack speed and cooldown. And finally, Strong Arm Bracers. There's a lot of things that can proc our Strong Arms. The Flip, the Ground Stomp, and the Furious Charge all proc our Strong Arms. So we'll be giving 30% increased damage, which is very important. We'll take Int, Vite, All Resist, and Armor. Onto the skills. We'll take Warcry. You can take either Hardened Wrath or Veteran's Warning. They're both very good. But we're primarily going to be keeping alive a Necro and a Wizard. They're intelligence classes, so additional armor is very good for them. Ignore Pain is going to keep everyone alive and make them immune to crowd control. Combined with Pride of Cassius and all of the cooldowns that we have, it should be up pretty much all the time. Threatening shout, we're going to shout and enemies are going to take 25 increased damage. After we make our little clump of enemies, we're going to proc our strong arms and we're going to shout and then they're going to die. Furious Charge, this is how we move around from pack to pack and how we pull everything into the middle. So this is mandatory and what our whole build is based on. Ground Stomp, Wrenching Smash. Once we get the enemies into the area that we want them in, we're going to pixel stack them with this skill. The main thing to understand about this skill is you typically want to stand somewhere where enemies aren't. Okay? So if you have a big group of enemies and you just run to the middle and you ground stomp, it's probably going to move absolutely nothing. But if you go just to the outside where no enemies are, it's going to pull them all to your location. And then you can do pro things like move them all to the right side and then clear a path in the middle, run to the middle, and then stomp again and bring everything into the middle. I'll show you some footage in a second, and I am by no means the world's best Z-Barb, but I can show you the basic idea on how to get you started. And then finally, Ancient Spear Rage Flip. When we flip stuff, it's going to go behind us. It's going to let us move monsters an incredible distance. All we're going to be doing all the time is moving monsters and displacing them into the setup that we're looking for. For the passives, Inspiring Presence is going to double the duration of our shouts, and it's going to give our allies 3% maximum life per second. Nerves of Steel is a cheat death. In case something goes wrong, we can stay alive. Superstition is going to reduce our damage taken and give us a chance to gain 2 Fury. This last passive is pretty up to you. You can take whatever you want. I like Animosity for the Fury generation. I've seen some people take Unforgiving again for Fury generation. Relentless is another good option. If you get really low, then all skills cost less. Okay, and you take reduced damage. There's a lot of different options. Take whichever one you want. I like Animosity. You can use whatever you like. In the cube, I like Ingeom, but there are other very good options. You could take Vigilance for an extra Sanctuary. You could try Messerschmitt's Reaver. I don't think it will be quite as good, but it's something to try because you aren't killing monsters that often. I'd rather, once an elite pack dies, have a massive opportunity to have my cooldowns up. But anyway, there's a lot of different options. You could try Echoing Fury. You can play around with it. This weapon slot in the cube is very up in the air. This is not up in the air. You need Chelonics Chain. When we use Warcry, we're going to move 40% faster. We're going to move our group to the next area quicker this way, so this is what we need. And finally, Band of Might gives us 80% damage reduction when we charge or ground stomp. This is what's going to keep us alive. Onto the Paragon points. I would take Max Fury because we're going to be spending a lot of Fury with throwing a lot of spears, so I like to take the Max Fury. Some people may not, but it's only 50 points. It's not that big of a deal. And then the movement speed, and then dump the rest into Vitality. You can put some into Strength if you want to play around with it to get some additional armor, but most of it should go into Vitality. Attack speed and cooldown is what we need. These two don't do anything for us. In defense, we want all resist and life first, and then armor, and then life per second. And then resource cost and life per hit is what we're after. Alright, let me take you into some gameplay and let me show you the basic ideas of how to play this build. Alright everyone, let me teach you what I know about the pole barb. The first thing I do when I zone into a rift is survey what kind of map do we have, and this is not a good one, so what we're looking for is a big open room that we can drag mobs to. So we all set up in the big room, and what I want to do is pull everything there and do a stomp like this. Now you'll notice that was a pretty good stomp. We got everything all clumped up. Oh, I guess now is a good time to tell you, please go follow me on YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. But anyway, what I'm trying to do is I want to gather up monsters on top of my team, and then I want to stand where monsters are not in order to stomp, and that will move them. If I run into the middle of the pack and stomp, it's not going to do anything. Did you see me standing just to the right of the Golgor where there were no monsters? And there again, that is what gives you a good stomp. Another thing that you will notice that I do not do is I don't stomp all the time. I don't stomp, 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 stomp. If you do that, it's not going to be effective because there's diminishing returns on the mobs. Okay? So on the next floor, I'm scouting ahead, trying to tell my team where to go. Keeps is pretty much the worst, but that little area is about as good as we can do. And a lot of times, your teammates can help you run around and aggro stuff as well. So when we get into a bad map like this, my first thought is we need to get out of here. One thing as the Z-Barb is, a lot of times the Z-Barb is kind of the leader of the group, making the decisions on where you go and where you stay and where you skip, and that comes with time. But I can tell you the Keeps is pretty much the worst map ever. So the reason why I have a little bit of extra time here is something went wrong with the drop. So my team notified me of that, so that's why I'm exploring around trying to bring whatever we can here, because we'll kill this little bit of trash and move on. The main reason why we do this build is the wizard who is clearing the entire rift, their damage is based on area damage. So having a ton of monsters stacked in one area is how you win with this build. Okay? So we move forward into the big room, but we're not happy with it because it's the Keeps. We just want to get out of here. So we get as close to the exit as possible, and again, we're just exploring around. But essentially all I'm doing is spamming my buffs and doing stomps to allow the wizard to blow everything up. Okay? So when you get onto a bigger map, okay, like this one, battlefields, this is going to be a much better example of what Z-barbing should look like because it's much more difficult to do on those small compartmentalized maps. But what you'll notice here is when you have a good map like battlefields, I spend the majority of my time pulling what was behind us forward. A lot of the times you let your team run ahead to gather the monsters, and the difficult part is bringing what was behind us. Okay? So I'll just step forward and see what we have and try to fling some stuff in here, and then I'll just go straight back to where we were and drag everything forward. Especially if you are able to kill the elites with a couple of drops, it's very important to continue bringing them. So again, I need to find an area where there are no monsters and do a stomp, and I usually try to do 2 at every single place that we stop, and try to stomp on top of the elites so all of the density is around them so they will die. As you can see here, my team is the one running ahead of me, and that's fine. Only now have I jumped ahead just to see what I can pull, but then it's straight back to the back, bringing what was behind us. And the Necro is the one that wears the Nemesis bracers, so you will be in charge in communicating with them on when you want to take the pylons and spawn those elites. Now normally it's the Barb's job to pick up all the globes, but I guess the monk was feeling very nice and decided to grab them all for me. It's always nice when people do your job for you. That's great. But here we have a very difficult dilemma. That yellow there is stuck behind that rock. I don't know if you can see him, and I want to bring him so bad. And finally he came out, and we're going to try to flip him in, and finally he's in, and then we stomp. So that's very, very handy. And another thing is your charge, your smash, and your spear all proc strong arms. When we get to the boss, oftentimes we will use the spear to proc strong arms because we don't want to interfere with what the Thorns Necro is doing. But just be aware that anything that you're doing here, pretty much your stomp or your charge or your spear, is always proccing strong arms. Another thing to be aware of is a lot of wizards wear Ancient Parthon Defenders as bracers, and that means every enemy stunned near them is going to give them toughness. So a lot of times what you'll do is after you have a big stomp and you don't need to stomp it anymore, you can charge that pack to give the wizard toughness as they drop their meteors. So that's another thing to keep in mind. So mobs like this, little tiny mobs that will cluster together very well, are very good for the wizard. Should be some very, very big damage here. Now normally we'd move very far forward here, but since the blues are almost dead and we've got all these little guys, we decide to stay. Okay, so sometimes you have to adjust your strategy depending on what the map gives you. So because that blue is stuck, I tried to pull him backwards a little bit at an angle to get him into a place where I could flip him in. And it's not working, it's not working. I only have a few seconds left. There's only 32 seconds between drops, but we finally got him in and he's dead. So that's amazing. Now we have to decide if we want to stay. Usually intersections, as you see right there, are very good places. And we have a conduit pylon, and with the new flavor of time, the conduit pylon lasts for a minute. So we could probably just take it right away, and we decide, you want to know what? Let's just do it. Conduit is active, and with these two elites, we will finally be on the Guardian. Now, once again, on the Guardian, there's going to be knowledge required for every single one, especially if you're playing with a Thorns Necro, but it's also different based upon if you're playing with a Lancer or a Demon Hunter or potentially a Crusader. So there's a lot to learn with this build, but this build is so rewarding when you learn how to move around correctly, buff your team, pixel stack everything, make good decisions, work with the Necro on the pylons. It's all very amazing. So I hope you all will try this build in Season 18. I'm not going to bore you with a very long boss kill. Really all I do here is stand behind the skeletons and throw a spear to proc strong arms. But I hope you'll give this a try next season, and Barbs need some love. All we can do really right now is support, but I hope in Season 19 a lot of the DPS builds will emerge again. Thank you very much.